What if the person you were told to hate became the love of your life? During one of the most brutal wars in history, thousands of enemy soldiers were transported across the ocean as prisoners, surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by armed men, expected to return home once the conflict ended, yet some never did, because somewhere between captivity and freedom, they found something stronger than loyalty to their homeland. They found love, and they chose it, even if it meant never seeing home again. During World War II, when large numbers of captured German soldiers needed secure detention, many were sent to the United States, far from the battlefields they had fought on for Germany. And among the states hosting camps, Texas became one of the most significant locations, where local Americans suddenly found themselves living near the very men portrayed as enemies in wartime propaganda. Yet instead of brutality, many prisoners experienced humane treatment under international conventions, receiving adequate food, shelter, medical care, and even recreational opportunities, which shocked many who had been told America was corrupt and hostile. And this contrast between propaganda and reality began to change perceptions on both sides, as prisoners worked on farms and infrastructure projects due to labor shortages caused by American men fighting overseas, creating daily contact between captives and civilians that slowly humanized the enemy, revealing young men who missed their families, worried about loved ones, and dreamed about life after war, while Americans discovered these prisoners were not monsters, but ordinary individuals shaped by circumstances. And in this environment of shared vulnerability, friendships began forming through small gestures like shared jokes, cigarettes, or conversations about farming. But even more complicated emotions soon emerged, as loneliness, uncertainty, and prolonged proximity created romantic attraction, despite strict rules forbidding relationships between prisoners and civilians, because emotions do not follow military regulations. And on isolated farms, a German POW repairing a fence might meet a farmer's daughter bringing lemonade, conversations beginning awkwardly with broken English and shy smiles, yet gradually deepening into emotional bonds, driven partly by the universal human need for connection during uncertain times when both sides faced separation from loved ones. And for many prisoners, falling in love with someone from the enemy nation felt like betrayal, while for American women, loving a captured soldier risked social condemnation and accusations of disloyalty. Yet feelings continued growing, sometimes secretly through exchanged letters or brief conversations during supervised work. And as months turned into years, the looming question became unavoidable. What would happen when the war ended and prisoners were sent home? Because every relationship existed under the shadow of inevitable separation. And by 1944, as Germany's situation worsened, news reached the camps that defeat was possible, creating conflicting emotions among prisoners who felt loyalty to their homeland, yet also recognized the devastation awaiting them there, while relationships with Americans deepened into emotional dependence, with couples finding creative ways to communicate despite restrictions, sometimes hiding notes or arranging brief meetings, communities reacting differently, with some condemning the relationships as betrayal, while others, especially farmers who worked closely with POWs, defended them as hardworking and respectful young men. And then, in May 1945, Germany surrendered, celebrations erupting across America, while inside POW camps, emotions were mixed: relief at survival, grief for a defeated homeland, anxiety about families in ruined cities. And for couples, the end of war meant imminent separation as repatriation procedures began, prisoners preparing to return to Europe, creating emotional farewells filled with tears and promises at train stations and camp gates, many believing they would never see each other again. Yet returning to Germany often proved traumatic, with destroyed cities, shortages, and uncertainty, making memories of America and the person they loved even more powerful, while American women who waited faced their own struggles, including distance, slow communication, and sometimes family opposition. But many relationships endured, and gradually immigration opportunities emerged as post-war policies evolved, creating pathways for some former prisoners to return legally, turning what once seemed impossible into achievable reunion and marriage. though choosing that path required a final decision: remain in the homeland they were born into or cross the ocean again by choice to build a new life. And those who chose love faced bureaucratic obstacles, sponsorship requirements, and long waits, yet determination prevailed, leading to emotional reunions years after separation, marriages symbolizing not only romance, but transformation from former enemies into family. Though life in America still brought challenges such as accents, cultural differences, suspicion from some communities, and lingering war memories, many immigrants integrated successfully, becoming workers, business owners, and community members, raising families that blended cultures and languages. And decades later, interviews revealed few regretted their decision, many believing they had followed the right path despite missing their homeland, with one former prisoner expressing that war had brought him as a captive, but love brought him back as a free man, illustrating a profound truth that while wars divide nations, individuals still connect. Propaganda creates enemies, but personal experience creates understanding. And sometimes the most lasting consequences of conflict are not political, but deeply personal, leaving descendants today whose family histories began with a captured soldier, a meeting on a farm, a forbidden relationship, and a decision that changed generations forever, proving that in the end, these were not just prisoners who stayed in America, but people who chose a future defined not by where they were born, but by who they loved.